Hey everyone, this is Chris from DS6 Mac, and I am with.
You're with Alexander740, also known as Brian Alexander Krejci, and I am the creator of the Foundry module.
Yes, and I like bringing people on, and you actually haven't seen anything on this file, have you?
No, I have not. This is my first time seeing this.
So
So,
this is my audience of one. I get to talk about this, and we'll go into details. So
yes.
from an artistic perspective, looking at the image, I will say the fact that only two or three illustrations that we have
hmm
previously rendered are going into the new book. Everything is basically new. So these are just advertisements. We were playing with
Ooh.
some photo doctoring because this
hmm
is a alternate universe retro biopunk roguelike extraction shooter.
I remember that. You told me about this last time we did this. You mentioned that you wanted to do an extraction shooter esque splat.
Yeah. And so we're dealing with here. So here's an in-universe advertisement for a flying car for the 1930s.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so cool.
so this is also an aspect of the setting. This is an illustration from Ultra Modern, which is one of the primary cruxes for our inspiration.
Oh, yeah.
Um, let's see. This is another famous image, which is the second image from Ultra Modern, which is the cover image we're going to be using. But like
Oh,
I
yeah.
said, let's go through that and show some of the other. That's another flying car concept. And we've been playing with some World War II imagery.
Yes.
Here is
Oh,
a new image. You're seeing this image for the first time. This is a Reaper going through a black zone. This is an image Nick did for me just last week.
looks so cool.
But we're going to go through the rules. These are some of the illustrations we've had. Do I have any of the sketches here? No, I don't. Let's close that off. Open up. Go into documents. This is some of the things I'll cut out.
Yeah,
Um,
this stuff kind of reminds me of Leviathan by Scott Westerfield. I mean, are you familiar with that series?
no, so this is Leviathan. I think of the mid '90s horror film with Peter Weller because I'm old.
Yeah, or the city destroying monster from Worm.
Also true. Like I said, we all pull our references there.
Yeah,
Um, so if I go into art, go into sketches. Here we go. And then I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to go into window capture.
yeah,
And there we go. So that's here's some more flying car concepts.
that's awesome.
Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Let's get that moved up. So here's some more sketches. This is a playable race. That's a playable race. That's a
Awesome.
playable race. More flying car concepts. Yeah, that is a bastion. That is a one of the playable, obviously races, playable species that you get to play as. We have quite a few.
I really like the aesthetics going on here. This reminds me of Forever Winter in some of the like.
Yeah, so Forever Winter was certainly one of our inspirations.
Yes. Okay. I need to reinstall the game. It's just I just
Sure.
like rebuilt my OS, so I'm gonna have to move everything that I had on Windows back onto Bazite. So
Yeah.
that's gonna take a while.
So we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through mostly mechanics, talking about it. But basically, this is an
Oh yeah.
alternate universe setting. The entry
hmm
point is actually in 1897, even though it is set in the mid 80s. There was something
Yeah.
called there's a UFO incident in Aurora, Texas, which happens in 1897. This is
Oh,
a
my home state.
real account. You can look up the Aurora UFO incident on Wikipedia. This is a truthful. In
hmm
our story, a strange artifact called the Sparkplug is retrieved from the wreck of this alien ship that crash lands in Aurora, Texas, and it starts the path rolling for this alternative timeline. The spark plug is a device that implants in the back of your neck, which gives you the inspiration to create alien technology, very specific alien technology. The first one, the one that one of our characters finds, a guy named Johann Wagner,
Hmm.
He's the only one that can create more of these sparks. So he ends up creating a
Okay.
institute of advanced technology, which turns into a corporation called Wagner Bioworks, and they go about creating
Yeah.
technology hundreds of years ahead of anything that's competing at the time. This creates a divergent
Hmm.
timeline of using these living power sources. So we go into detail what these power sources are. They rewrite the
Hmm.
course of human history up to a point where we now, in the mid 80s, have a basically apocalyptic anomaly zones scattered across the world, um, which is usually regions where we've had military conflict, and unfortunately, the side effects and the detritus of this alien biotechnology is now running rampant. And
Makes sense.
that is basically what we're dealing with, but we're going to talk more about how it gets about. So yeah, multiversal extraction shooter. So yes, in this game, technically, you yourself can be playing yourself, and you are controlling biological clones of yourself in a parallel reality. This is something that you can actually do within this setting.
That's interesting.
Yes. We have copied the relevant rules. We go like the huge section here is the whole alternative timeline. There is a Sparkplug Chronicles Reddit page that has been posting, and it's been
Oh,
just
I gotta check
posting.
that
It
out.
has just been posting lore, and it's been getting a lot of
Hmm.
attention because a lot of people don't know what it is, but they do know that it's a slowly building alternate reality setting. Uh, so you can the default setting does set you during the 1980s, but you can, if you want, set it during any time you want. You could set it during World War One, World War Two, during the North American War, which is called the NAW, which is a North American conflict. It wasn't a second Civil War because it was neither civil nor a
Yeah.
American conflict, and it involved basically Mexico and Canada, so it's called the North American War. It turned into an armistice.
Okay. My question is: so did Mexico and Canada basically like fight over like the old United States of America in this timeline, or is it just basically them just yelling at each other across the borders of America?
So here's where things get interesting. We'll jump the gun and talk
Hmm.
about to answer your question. And please ask
Yeah.
questions when you get them.
Oh, I will be.
So the conflict was there are many of these spark technology called spark tech, and almost all of
Yeah.
them deal with biotechnology. Some of them
Hmm.
are trophons, like we see. This is a bioworks vehicle, and this
Hmm.
inside is a trophon. And a trophon is a organic power source. It is able to run
Okay.
off of water, salt, and sunlight. And
Okay, that's genius.
this single
Hmm.
reactor produces more electricity than than basically I think an acre of solar farms. Um,
Hmm.
and as a result, you're able to do stuff like uh, as we've seen in the setting, you can actually have flying cars and so forth. The flying engine, by the way, which you can see is kind of covered up here, is called a NOx drive. That's also Spark Tech. A NOx drive is a fuelless power source that ignites nitrogen in the air. It basically it ignites dinitrogen and creates propellant. So it uses pure electricity, pure power to ignite ambient atmosphere and use that as propulsion. It's a very
Okay,
powerful
that's a
fuel
very
source, but that's how we get flying vehicles without having to have fuel. You just basically use this trophon. But this character here,
I just went on to I'm sorry, you go for sound like you.
so this over here, this is another example
Yeah.
of Spark Tech. This is a Gelf, or a genetically engineered life form.
Hmm.
This specifically is called a Seraph. Seraphs are the only ones that look entirely human.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so this is two total examples. In fact, the North American War, to answer your question, was a battle between who gets to use these things and who gets to use these things. So
Mm.
when these were developed, they were developed as a slave species. The issue with these
Ah.
guys is that if you abuse them, they have a tendency to mutate, and they can do various mutations, like, for example, growing teeth, and acting erratically, or in some cases exploding like an Akira explosion into
Yeah.
biological biomass, and it's called a blight rot.
Uh-huh.
So the lore is very humorous. The fact that they'll actually work pretty well until you abuse them, which what happens when, of
Okay.
course, they immediately accelerate these things into war, and that turned very badly for the people using them for war, which were mostly the Nazis. Oddly enough, the Nazis were going to win World War II, but then when their own machines
Started
basic
rebelling.
started rebelling against their own creators, it created this massive wasteland, the first black zone called the Boneyards, which goes from France all the way to the Ukraine. It's one of the largest black zones out there. Most of Europe is basically a
Ooh.
dead zone. So
That would definitely like vastly change the timeline. Geez. Are the Soviets still around? That's my question.
they are. Like I said, they lost considerable ground because once again, when the Nazi war machine was pushing
Oh
east
yeah.
from Operation Barbo, no Operation yeah during Operation Barbosa, I think is the name.
Barbarossa,
they
yeah.
they did not have the fuel shortages because they didn't have to run supply lines, so they were able
So,
to
so
push
they
all
were
the way
able
to
to the
they were
Urals
able to
then.
push all the way to Moscow, and they were close to losing the
Mm,
war when the blight rot started to explode and the Nazi war machine collapsed as their own war machines
makes
turned
sense.
against them. Now
Yeah.
we talk about these blight rots a lot. They output pollution called blight. Blight
Mm-hmm.
is a can manifest in different colors. It terraforms the landscape, basically creates alien worlds. And there are about five or six, well, actually 8 or 9 black zones. Every one of them is a little different in how it manifests itself. For example, in
Okay.
America, it's doesn't seem to be as bad, except it's extremely large and vast.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, in America, there was a rising concern about the abuse of these things and the amount of pollution they were putting out. And
Yes.
then, of course, the other side will says, "Well, you're operating Guelphs, which are a slave labor." So we basically had a conflict where one side was saying you have to stop using these machines, and the other side saying
Mm-hmm.
you have to stop enslaving these people. And so the North
Makes sense.
American War started off between the people who wanted to use these and the people who wanted to enslave these people, and that
Okay.
created the North American War, which was a conflict where Trophon war machines were fighting against genetically engineered soldiers, and
Mm-hmm.
we actually did not end up with a clear victory. And so there's an
Okay.
armistice zone called the Rocky Divide, which follows the Rocky Mountains. And so we have the Heartland, which is central United States, and Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then
Okay.
Olympic Maritime, which are the outside states. And
Mm-hmm.
they've also formed their own nation. So there's no United States, there's no Canada, there's no 51st state. There is Olympic Maritime, and
Uh-huh.
then there's the American Heartland. That's basically what's left of North America. And then, as we said, into
Okay.
19 and even considering those regions within those two nations, there are huge. There's also another one, a small one called the American Democratic Republic, which is the Northeast United States.
Okay. So that would be like Chicago and New England then.
Yeah, basically that
Okay.
merged up with Nova Scotia and a bunch of the northeastern provinces. So that's the answer to your
So we
question
got
there.
like a okay. So basically like North America balkanized a little bit. What happened to Mexico? Um.
So Mexico was mostly part of, like Texas is part of American Heartland,
Mhm,
but New Mexico and Mexico are part of the
mhm.
Olympic Maritime.
Okay.
So going back to what you were saying before, then um, the North American War, which happened in the 70s, also created a schism within Bioworks because Bioworks was
Yeah.
originally an American company. During the 1920s, Wagner fled to Germany and formed Wagner Machine Works, where he worked for the Nazis.
Of course.
After the war, he fled to Australia and then was caught and expedited back to America as part of Operation Paperclip. He
Of
was able
course.
to resume control of his original Wagner Bioworks. And then when the war broke out, with the North American War happened in 1970,
Yeah.
one of his more controversial underlings, a guy named Kessler, broke off and formed Kessler Biogenetic. So American Heartland gained control of Kessler Biogenetic, while Olympic Maritime got control of Wagner. And so the North American War was not just a war between nations and ideology; it was a war
Mhm.
between technological beliefs, technological philosophies. With Kessler very much being a villain in this story, even though Wagner himself
Uh-huh.
is he himself has admitted to the war crimes he inadvertently caused in his obsession for for scientific truth.
Yeah.
So
That's putting it mildly, considering what the Nazis got up to in this timeline.
exactly. So we go into huge details in the setting, and so in the book, it's going to be a bunch of sidebars that'll go into detail
Hmm.
as you're reading. But there is a lot. Whenever there's a question, I generally go into a
Hmm.
sidebar and I kind of examine how things are. Uh, and there is an Appendix F, as it's called here. It should be noted
Oh
that
yeah.
by the 1984, which is the beginning of the setting, the population is significantly lower than the planetary population around the same time in our timeline.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
especially with this like technology running rampant in
yeah.
large swaths of the world.
Yeah. So there are a couple hundred of these spark plugs.
Mhm.
And there are sparks for everything. There are sparks for these trophons, for these
Mhm.
Gelfs, for example, are all part of the spark tech. And on top
Okay.
of that, there are things called organetics, which are cybernetics, but they're organically grown. Those are also based off of spark tech.
All
There
right.
are things called catalysts, which are so. And the oddly enough, not every single spark tech is momentous. Not everyone is a reactor or a Gelf. Sometimes I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I have a biological invention that turns a Coke into a Pepsi. Not saying it's going to be that mundane, but not every spark is created equal. Uh,
Has there been sparks for space travel? That's my next question.
so the interesting question is not yet, but
Oh,
there are specs that do create portals. So it's portal tech, and at near
so we
the
got FTL before space travel then.
yeah. So basically, no one's ever had the need to
Hmm.
create space travel. Now there are satellites, but not
Okay.
to the extent that we have satellites today. It also should be noted that these portals that they've created, rift gates and slip gates and so forth, some of them have
Yeah.
gone to other planets and some of them have gone into other realities, which allows people from parallel realities to move into this
Oh,
world as
very
well.
interesting.
And that's how we get in a situation where you yourself could actually control a cloned version of yourself in this universe while sitting in your computer
You're
at
giving
home.
me ideas. Okay. Speaking of like writing, like from my world, for my own novel, part of it is like biotech with with alien materials involved. Basically, the idea I had was to create a material called the black reed. It's a naturally growing carbon nanofiber, and it falls somewhere in Anatolia in the Middle Ages. It allows for some pretty interesting things.
Yeah, well,
I'll elaborate on it later.
oh, please, yeah. Uh, there's also like same thing with computers. They've developed
Oh yeah.
biocores, which are basically living computers. These also predate most
Mhm.
computers, and we actually go into details of
Oh yeah.
how powerful they are. For example, the first biocore ThinkBox One, announced in 1956, followed numerous noteworthy traditional electronic computers. In fact, the TB1's equivalent architecture was that of a 16-bit microprocessor with a CPU clock speed of 25 megahertz. So this was in 1956. So the BioCore
Mm.
in 1956 was the equivalent of effectively a 386, which is technology that came out in the mid 1990s,
Oh yeah.
right? Um, and so they're talking about how powerful these things got. But like I said, every single piece of this technology has a tendency of potentially rebelling. Biocores, for example, they connect up with themselves and within networks by producing something called flesh wire, which I'm sure is just a great term. Uh, this flesh wire, like basically, you can grab a biocore and plant it in your office building, and then it will snake flesh wire to every single component in the building, so it could run the system for you, whether it be security, cameras, or what have you. Unfortunately, if it gets stranded in something like if you have a biocore that's in a black zone, which unfortunately has happened on numerous occasions, it has a
Oh yeah.
tendency of mutating, and so it has done things like create flesh wire. in places where it shouldn't belong. It has used flesh wire to embed in corpses and reanimate them.
Ugh.
So there are situations where if you can approach a building, for example, in one of the adventures that's being written, you have to retrieve something from inside a corporate headquarters, but it's completely encased in flesh wire. And not only that, but it's also zombified people and creatures. And so you just see all these
I'm gonna
cables.
whip out all the flamethrowers if I'm going into one of those.
It gets worse.
I can imagine. Gosh,
This,
imagine one of these things taking over a place like Cheyenne Mountain or maybe Raven Rock.
oh yeah.
That would be a nightmare.
We of course have our own religion, which is called the Covenant, which seeks to to excise the old flesh and replace it with alien
Oh,
technology.
great. Evangelical transhumanist Christians. What could go wrong?
Exactly.
This is giving me flashbacks to the novel I wrote.
And then the final
Villains
thing
like that.
were there are things called bone frames and things called shapes. The bone frames and shapes are monstrosities. Bone frames were actually intentionally built. They're basically giant mecha, living mecha that were used in the North American War.
Hello, Evangelion.
Yes, kind of like they're more like the Evangelion kind of puts the impression of these lanky, tall humanoid. Bone frames are more like like walking buildings that unfortunately can and have mutated if left alone. And there are these things called shapes, which are these huge abominations that people see on the horizon that never seem to engage people and try to be left alone, and no one's ever able to get close to them because they're always so far away. So that moves us into what we're going to be expecting. We have the wireless communication. There is the internet between the biotech. It's called the Choir.
The Choir, yes.
Yeah. I love wrapping myself in Theotech. We have a little timeline here, and technological innovations. We'll go into that, and we'll go into playable races. Okay, so this is a string. Obviously, there are no elves or no dwarves. It's not a fantasy setting, and so there is basically nobody is playing a purely human person.
Makes sense.
And there's a couple reasons for that. And some of it is setting based. We'll go into how. First of all, talk about the Gelfs. The Gelfs are genetically engineered life forms. There are 6 of them. One that's basically focused for each ability type, although some of them are a little different. They have specific rules that are unique to their own, including the fact that technically they are programmed to follow human instructions. But they have their own unique set of abilities. The first one we'll talk about is the Axiom. Now, if we look at so this is an Axiom. This is our first sketch of an Axiom. Axioms are small, and they look like small rodents.
That's so cool.
You would assume that they are the halflings of the setting because they are small, but they are not roguish or cunning. In fact, these are the intelligent Gelfs. These are the creative Gelfs. They're extremely smart. They work as lab assistants, and so they're
think Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy then.
Except even more focused on brain power and less on military power. But yeah, there's definitely a bit of Rocket Raccoon kind of thrown in there. So they have stuff like, they have the ability like the smarts, they have a silicon augmented mind and so forth. So that's the Axiom. Then next up, which we've seen before, is this guy here. He is a Bastion. Bastions are a little different. There's another image of a Bastion. Bastions are genetically engineered life forms where they grow them inside exoskeleton frames. So this is what they look like. They are basically, they don't have a skeletal structure. Well, technically they do have a skeletal structure, but it's fused to the inside of the armor that they're placed in. So what you see is what you get. So as you might imagine, they don't wear armor, they are armor. So you get to pick your armor. The next up are the Atlases, and this is kind of our first sketches of what the Atlas looks like. Atlas are utility. So the Bastions are military, by the way. I should mention that Bastions are military. They were designed to be soldiers. They don't really talk that much, and they tend to have a hitting things and so forth. Atlases are actually relatively passive. They're very strong. Yes, they have they're 6-limbed. They have a set of intermediate limbs that can either be feet or hands, depending on what you want. So it's not like a humanoid with 2 arms or 2 legs. They have effectively 2 torsos with 2 smaller rib cages. And so they don't really have a default form. So when you're moving
Mhm.
around, you have a hybrid capacity, which means you get to choose if you want to move on all fours, which will give you a speed boost, or you could have 4 arms, which will make you able to do stuff like climb or use weapons a bit more effectively. So
Okay, yeah, these things are really cool.
so the next up is the Oracle. We do not have an image of the Oracle yet. We're still working on it. Oracles
Hmm.
are kind of like biotech angels, but it's actually more closer to thinking of them as humanoid manta rays. They have very spindly arms, but they have these big fleshy type of outgrowths,
Uh-huh.
and they are wisdom based. They are caretakers. They're healers. They have this special type of a hug where they can hug a person and their manta rays and heal you of virtually anything that harms you. If you have an oracle in your party, that is your entirely healing build cleric, because that's what an oracle is for.
Yeah.
They do not have lips. They are these, like I said, these are very inhuman creations. And it should be noted that this is all Spark Tech, which means you get this implanted and you create this biotank which creates it. You're not 100% sure what you're creating until the tank opens and then this thing flops out and you're like, what are you supposed to be good for? So and in the sidebars we go into detail on their genetic structure. For example, we say here, for example, they're an engineered mosaic of avian and fragmented ZW and XY systems. Unlike mammals and birds, the sex chromosomes are scattered and unstable, resembling a platypus's chaotic chain of 5 XY pairs. So we go into detail on the
Oh yeah.
genetics of it. Interface with avian Z-like sequences that bear no direct homology. I did a lot of stupid research on genetics.
No. This is great stuff. I like
So they
this.
have telepathy, they have a sympathetic embrace, extrasensory diagnosis. So they have a lot of cool abilities. The seraph, once again, we've spoken about. This is the seraph right here. Seraphs
Hmm.
look completely human, except they're given ears to distinguish the fact that they are very much not human. Um, and they were designed as servants, as housekeepers, and so forth. And basically they're the ones that really spearheaded the liberation movement, and this is the one that people, oh
Yeah.
wait, these things are maybe completely human like creatures that we're enslaving. That doesn't seem so cool.
14th Amendment, anyone?
There's a lovely little irony, the fact that um technically they're all supposed to be male, but a scientist learned how to suppress um so they have, whenever you see a female one, they're actually intersex. um
Ah, interesting.
so because they have complete androgen insensitivity. In fact, in the novel writing, this character is a female seraph.
Uh-huh.
And so those are seraphs, and then finally we get, no, not finally, we get tabula rasas, and tabula rasas are an R-shoot, which we'll actually talk about in a second here. I'm going to skip through them because they're a very unique situation. And finally, we have the Vesper. And the Vesper, we don't really have a good illustration of the Vespers yet, just because some of the
Hmm.
illustrations that we've had are currently kind of,
A
we're
work in
kind of
progress.
intermediary. Um, you are an octopus. You're an octopus with big eyes, and a human mouth,
I'm just imagining an octopus with googly eyes and a human mouth right now.
and so they have several unique abilities. They're quite agile, and because like an octopus, they can squeeze quite easily.
Yeah.
But they make them. People have made power suits for them. So Axioms have made power suits that they can inhabit and control, so they can walk around with some of their tentacles going into the limbs so they can kind of walk around. But the other important thing is that they can actually attach to people and puppet them around if they want to, by basically affixing their tentacles, which are nerve sensitive, and hijacking people if they want.
Oh god, brain controlling octopus. I love it.
So yeah, and it should be noted very close. These are all playable characters. You could have a party inhabited by this. Which brings us to
Okay.
tabula rasas. So tabula rasas are part of a very large section of the game. This is part of the extraction shooter element. One of these inventions were called effectively, well, they're called, there's tabula rasa. Tabula rasas are these faceless shapeshifters. You put on a little fleshy thing called a governor hood. This allows you
Hmm.
to take control of a tabula rasa. Tabula rasa then shape changes to look like you, and then you basically telepresence into the tabula rasa, and it does everything for you. You are that
Remote
person.
control changelings. That's what I'm getting here.
Yeah, effectively remote control changeling. They become you, and so if you're in combat and your tabula rasa dies, you just wake up, take off your hat, and you suffer from exhaustion. But then eventually you can put on another hat, take control of another tabula rasa. So this is where the extraction shooter pops into play, where you can your tabula rasa can get killed, and you're like, crap, I left all my gear. So you have to get another tabula rasa, go back into the same black zone, find out where your corpse dropped, and hopefully no one's stolen your shit.
What I like is how this allows the DM to make more difficult encounters without worrying about killing off his party. I did something similar in one of my campaigns,
Yeah,
where my players had to infiltrate a world, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna avatar this. Here's your backup bodies that you're gonna be piloting for a bit. And it was like it was really funny, like watching like a Wookiee like pilot a human meat sack. It was
yeah.
hilarious.
Now that being said, some people may choose not to, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But we kind of let people figure out how
Oh
they
yeah.
want to play, because there are different ways, and we go into details. So a tabula
Hmm.
rasa, I'm gonna go and close this off again so we can talk about tabula rasas here. Um, There are, unfortunately, when you take control of a tabula rasa, unbeknownst to most people, a little bit of a fragment of your original personality stays within the rasa. And if
Hmm.
enough people do that hundreds of times, eventually an emergent personality will form. People don't want you to know this. This is not public information. They don't want you to think that you're sending living beings to die and you're on your behalf. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in some situations where dozens of different people have taken control of the same tabula rasa, also called a skin,
Hmm.
well, we create a scenario where you have a fragmented personality with different memories and different personality quirks. And so, with
Oh yeah.
this awakened creature called a wraith, you actually create
Ooh,
potentially different personalities. You can only shape change into people you have been.
interesting.
And so, this is where things get interesting. For example, one ability you score your choice increases by 2 to a maximum of 20. You can assign this benefit to up to 3 different people via replication, which means, according to replication, you possess a biological information of different people who possessed you in the past. You create names and physical descriptions of a number of medium or small humanoids equal to 3 plus your wisdom modifier. Using a minute or 10 rounds, you can shapeshift into one of these creatures or return to your true form. Your game statistics, other than size and shape of each form, your equipment does not change. And then we go into details. For example, um, so you can, once again, you get one ability score of your choice increases by 2, and you assign those to 3 different people. So if you need a dex, if you have a +2 dex and you need a +2 strength, you can
Hmm.
shape change to one of your other people that you are part of your personality, and that person has a +2 strength but doesn't have the dex bonus. Um, you,
Interesting.
you could also know 3 additional languages, but each one must be assigned to a different person. So sometimes you have to shape change to speak someone else's language. And the same thing goes with proficiency and skills. You have to assign these to replication as well. It is not, I'm not saying any of these classes are easy to play. Some of them are going to be very tricky. We say that about the rates, they are very tricky to play.
Tricky but fun. I could get some mileage out of this.
Yeah. And if you want to play a person, a regular person, most likely you're playing a spark. A spark is a person, a regular human that's had a spark tech implant. Um, and spark tech does rewrite your DNA. So you do get certain additional abilities. You have a longer life. And it's basically
Hmm.
meant to explain why you as a player character are somehow so much more powerful than a regular person. So
Makes
if
sense.
you're creating characters for this setting, very few, nobody should be playing a regular human. You're either playing a
Oh yeah.
spark, which is a human just with alien DNA, or you're playing
Hmm.
one of the Gelfs.
Makes
Uh,
sense.
so, and then we get into here. So we talk about backgrounds, and we talk about suggestions for backgrounds if you want to use them from any of the previous D&D books. And we have a couple of ones. We have a Phantom, which
Hmm.
is basically if you are wirelessly connecting from another parallel reality. And what else we have here? Come on, what's going on here? Wake up! There we go. Something's happening to my. Every once in a while, my word just wants to slow down.
So from what I'm getting here, it's completely possible to be an isekai protagonist in this setting.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and instead of a fantasy world, you end up in a biotech horror wonderland.
Yeah, so there is entirely possible situation. If someone says, "I want to bring my fantasy characters into this world," yeah, absolutely. Go through a Riftgate just like you would if you were playing a Palladium game, and they arrive into this world, and everything becomes foreign and strange. They don't know how the world works. For
Oh yeah,
most,
I'm getting Planescape Torment vibes from this.
yeah, for most people, you're playing as a Reaper, although you don't have to have the Reaper line. But the idea of a Reapers
Hmm.
are people that are that take it upon themselves to go into black zones. Now, why would someone go into the black zones? Well, black zones are large, so sometimes you have to go through black zones to get to the other side. You're escorting
Uh-huh.
people. Um, like where is the? Didn't I have? Where is that appendix? I'm gonna give examples here. Here we Appendix N. Here we go. So here are some of the examples we talked about when it comes to things that might have inspired me. We talk about the movie Annihilation, which is something that people see a
Oh
lot.
yeah.
The Book of Koli, Children of Men, Darkwood the game, Death Stranding the game,
Raised by Wolves.
Raised by Wolves, Prospect, which is a movie, Roadside Picnic, and of course
Oh,
Stalker.
you forgot Forever Winter.
Hmm?
I don't see Forever Winter in that list.
Oh, I should put that in there. Thank you. Where is it? We'll put that right there. With that Forever Winter.
Yeah.
Get that in there.
Yes.
Roadside Picnic, which of course is what Stalker is based on. Tales from the Loop and Electric State are all and there's here as well. I may actually put The Labyrinth, which is his new book. Those are all basically suggestions here. Now we go back to where we were before, which is right about Couriers, Neo-Luddites, Reapers, and we have other things. And then we get to Prestige. Here is probably the most controversial rule mechanic that you'll see in this book.
Oh yeah.
So this is a prestige system. This is a prestige system not unlike the prestige system you saw in Forever Winter, which has been replicated in a couple of first-person shooters. I do believe one of the Call of Duties has it. And this is a way of player characters to continually leveling up without making them too powerful. We
Okay.
won't go into monsters because monsters haven't been tackled yet, but monsters are starting off relatively tough, but they don't go so high. So there aren't any challenge rating half or 1/4 or even one. I think the lowest challenge rating creature is going to be a challenge rating 2. And it's
Hmm.
meant to imply that if you go into a black zone looking for a fight, you're screwed. Um,
Yeah.
Almost everything in a black zone is going to be more powerful than you. And so in the campaign guide, I go into details with telling GMs is like, this should not be played like a dungeon romp. This is not about players kicking open the door and
Yeah.
ambushing, preparing for initiative.
I dropped something. Oh,
Yeah,
where'd it go? Never mind.
it
Sorry,
is.
I just dropped something on the ground.
Yeah,
Okay, keep going, keep going.
it mostly is about trying to
Mhm.
avoid fights, and if you have to get into a fight, be aware that it's not going to be easy. I think the lowest challenge rating are hollows, which are uh, tabula races that have been killed in combat and then blight's
Mhm.
taken them. And the blight basically eats out their brain. So they quite literally look like hollowed out zombies.
That sounds absolutely lovely.
Yeah. And we have a couple of other horrible things you can encounter. Like nothing is terribly pleasant out there. If it's
I
not,
can imagine so, yeah.
mutated trophons, it's other reapers obviously are part of the problem as well. So a prestige system basically keeps you in between levels 1 and 10, and basically the way it works
Okay.
is you have a once you reach a new level, you actually get reset back to 1 and you start over.
Interesting.
So this is the idea here is that once you hit level 2, you actually have to restart level 1. And when you get to level 2, your prestige level increases to 3. Then when you reach level 3,
Okay.
you reset back to 1 and have to do the process over. So you're basically restarting your character progression. So it actually suggests that you have a copy of your character sheet at first level,
Mm-hmm.
so you can restart. And then when you restart, you can just replay your character and try new paths. You don't have to copy paste your path from before. Every single time your prestige level increases, you gain a permanent boost. So you're not just resetting your character every single time. Every single time you reset, there are things you can do. And every single time you get one of these abilities, you get to access a higher tier. So we have the prestige levels, and they go all the way up to 11, and then they stop. So after that, you can just continue progressing from that. It tells you
All
how
right.
many prestige bonuses you get, and so we can go through here. And so, for example, the first time you get a prestige reward. So if once you go to level 2, you reset to 1, you get a prestige benefit. And the next time you go to 3, you reset back to 1. Then when you go to 4, you reset back to 1. You go to 5, you reset to 1. But every single time you reset,
Interesting.
every time you reset, you get one of these prestige bonuses. So, for example, ability score bonuses. If you pick tier 1, the next time you get a prestige benefit, you get to select tier 2, and so you can select the same one and they get more powerful.
I like this because like I'm a big problem with D&D is definitely level creep. Like the higher level you get, the longer encounters take because people just take their sweet time doing their turns. And this is another reason why I like Foundry so much is that it automates a lot of this stuff and smooths things over. It's just
Exactly.
convincing people to use the product is a pain in the ass. Oh gosh.
Yeah, so we have some of them are tangible, some of them are more metaphysical, or like a meta for the setting. This one's the skill bonuses. You're an adept scavenger. You just get artifacts. Your damage output increases. You get additional hit points. You get to have luck points. You just get money. Uh,
Money's
your
always useful.
your reputation increases with the villages outside of black zones. You can gain resistance, proficiencies,
I can see the
reputation.
resistance as being very useful long term because you're going to run into a lot of nasty shit. So something like a grounder getting the resistance tiers as they're prestiging would be very useful for them.
Oh, absolutely. Tool
And for the
proficiency.
face reputation.
Yeah, and yeah, reputation, tool proficiency, and so there's way more
Oh yeah,
benefits than you can possibly get. So that is the Reaper. That's the prestige system. And now it's important to note that these are completely optional. You do not need to run this. You can just run it as a regular
exactly,
one. But it's not a huge rewriting. You're not mandatory to follow this. Tech is going to be
exactly. Yeah.
interesting. As I established in some of the things I've posted so far, this Spark tech will give you genetically engineered life forms, or
Mm-hmm.
organetic organ replacements, biological drives. It'll do everything except make a gun. Not a
It's
single,
funny.
not a single Spark tech. Now, people have abused Spark tech to kind of retrofit it into a weapon, and we'll talk about the
Mm-hmm.
few instances where that has happened, but they're generally unpredictable and dangerous. So as a result, you're stuck using the relatively archaic weapons at the time. So if you're in 1984, you're kind of stuck with 60s and 70s weapons. If not, sometimes you're stuck with old World War II surplus.
Okay, I like the high tech low tech mashup a little bit here. Like it's pretty cool.
Yeah. This is part of a joke where I had a friend telling me how much he
Mm-hmm.
hates the fact that whenever you see a science fiction film in the future,
Oh yeah.
somebody's walking around with a modified AK-47. He's like, and I say, it's like he knows why, because it's easy from a props perspective to get an AK. But he's just
Also,
like,
the AK is very freaking easy to make. All you need is stamped metal parts
yeah,
and a few screws, and you can make an AK. Like, oh gosh, you should see like the gun industry in the Philippines, like small time like gun shops just making like 1911s out of like scrap plate is just really fascinating.
Yeah, and so in this situation, and this is actually the reason why I produced the armory. I was actually adding in all those guns here, and
Oh
then
yeah.
after I had made the 60th World War II firearm, I'm like, why am I not just doing the armory first? So I literally put this book on hold
Oh
and made
yeah.
the armory. Reaper armor
Yeah.
and weapons are all very traditional. However,
Hmm.
there is interesting equipment, and this is where things get interesting. I talked about these these trophons. So this here is a certain type of trophon. It's a large one. There is a
Yeah.
smaller one called an echo, and the echo is about this big,
Hmm.
and it looks like you're carrying around a living thing on your back. It's encased in steel, but it has a rebreather so it can breathe, and then it also
Yeah. Yeah.
has an oxygen tank, a water tank, which supplies it power. So you've got this weird thing on your back, and it's this extremely powerful energy source that can power high technology that you carry around with
Hmm.
you. You've got to be wired in. So this is a very common fashion thing you'll notice is characters are
Yeah.
walking around with this backpack and tons of really high technology. And
Uh-huh.
so there's a bunch of equipment. So we talk about the biocell. There's the biocell. We have
Yeah, I remember that.
rebreather, a biotorch, um, which is these very large flashlights. And you can they're like the headlights are these lights are very powerful.
Hmm.
Um, there are machines allow you to scan people's DNA to see where they came from. You can extract like there's something called a cortical extractor.
Oh
Um,
yeah. That reminds me of Altered Carbon a little bit. That the
yeah,
cortical stacks the back of someone's head.
yeah.
That tech would probably exist in this universe, I would imagine.
Not that. No, specifically,
Now that, okay.
I'm not ripping off like signature technology from other movies. I'm trying to be original with this. But for example,
Hell yeah.
there's something called Cutler's Autopilot. Cutler's Autopilot is if you are killed or if you're flying a holo that's killed, it
Uh-huh.
activates and tries to remote control your corpse out of the combat zone so you can retrieve your gear.
That's useful. I
Exactly.
imagine that players are probably going to want that on their characters in case they run into something that murks them a lot. I'm just imagining that in this setting, like the DM's like, okay, here's this very deadly monster, and it's like a running gag that each week the players try to kill it, and they keep getting their asses beat, and so they have to. I could just imagine the sheer catharsis of finally beating the monster, and they're like, "Yay, we win!" And then
Yeah.
something bigger comes out of the woods, and then murks them.
Yeah, so stuff like echolocation beacons, they like basically you can lay down like breadcrumbs if you want to find
Hmm.
yourself. The discharge gauntlet is one of the few where it's actually a weapon where you create where you actually discharge the biocell and as a lightning bolt, but it's not a line of lightning, it's a cone. So
Oh yeah,
it'll attack basically everything in front of you. So if there's an ally, they're getting hit. There's no one. This is a friendly fire weapon.
yeah.
Uh,
Speaking of weapons in Spark Tech, you made mention earlier that the engine had the same output as a solar farm.
yeah.
With the one like your solar farm, you could power a very nasty laser with that kind of output.
Yeah, the issue is once again the laser technology is still rooted in the 1930s and 1940s, and
Oh,
that's
fair, yeah,
ultimately comes down to since the spark tech, since people are focusing all on spark tech, this is not 20th century laser
makes
technology.
sense.
This is technology from the 1940s, 1950s. By the time you get to
Speaking
the
of 1940s and 50s technology, they actually did make railgun prototypes in the 40s and 50s. So technically, railguns could exist in this setting as practical weapons.
yeah,
Of course, then the barrel life would cause problems, but they could make a spark tech for better barrel coatings, like say something graphene or
but
carbon
once
based.
again, there is
Yeah,
no spark tech which encourages violence.
interesting.
That the idea is the fact that all of the crap that's happening on the planet in this setting is all about how humanity abused the spark tech for
Makes
warfare.
sense.
And that if they used the spark tech without any form of military or violent applications, the world wouldn't be in decline. Because at this point in the story,
Makes sense.
the world is falling apart. It is basically on its last legs, right? Because
Hmm.
one thing we talk about the the black zones, the within
Yeah.
the zone and radiating out of the zone is this reproduction suppression field. It's kind of like what you see in Half-Life 2.
Ah,
Nobody can have children within about 200 to 300 kilometers of a black zone, and these black zones are increasing. And so they predict that by the mid 2020s, the Earth will be completely encased in this one, and the human race will effectively be extinct.
does this like anti-reproductive field only work on humans, or is it like everything?
No, it only affects humans. It doesn't even affect sparks. So if you're a spark human, you
Ah,
can reproduce. But
interesting.
but
Very interesting.
yeah.
It implies that something intelligent is preventing the reproduction of humans. Maybe there's a very powerful like biological entity that's controlling these anti-reproductive fields, and they're like, okay, humanity, you done goofed. You lose breeding privileges now.
We never reference specifically, but obviously there is uh a cosmic horror aspect to the setting.
Oh yeah.
Because, for example, we go into details of whispers within the choir. We talk about the strange dreams people have if they have spark tech or they are gelfs. They have strange dreams, and so there's a
Oh yeah.
lot of like where we do point to something a bit more um, outworldly, but we never reference, we never specify, we don't give it a name.
Hmm.
Um, Geostasis projector allows you to claim certain lands. Basically, it locks a region down, encases it almost like it petrifies the whole region, and nobody can take anything. You can't even retrieve gear. You can't salvage anything from this area until somebody puts out a code in this geo lock to release the territory. This is good in
Uh-huh.
case you have to head if you need to lock an area down and come in with more resources in order to mine something, or you're close to being killed and you don't want someone else claiming your stuff, you throw down a geostasis projector and it prevents anyone from stealing anything. Um, let's see, grabbers like is kind of is like a telekinetic beam. And what is the Hespard generator? Oh, Hespard. So you can't fly, but you can reduce your weight so you can jump really far. And then, of
Interesting.
course, there are drugs, illegal drugs, which have been extracted
Yay,
from.
drugs.
Oh yeah, we have a bunch of weirdly weird drugs. Um, Bishop, which is makes you basically immune to exhaustion, bonuses to strength and dex. Deviance, you gain temporary access to one skill you don't possess, so you're basically picking up the scattered memories. You're pulling in fluid from a dead tabula rasa and injecting it, so
Yeah.
you're getting some kind of random ability. And there's a few of those: Eidolon, Ghost, and there's one that allows you to resurrect people from the dead, of course.
Of course.
And so knockers are like sonar. There are but the important thing about this gear is that they all tie into this biocell, and biocell can only have like two or three. Can only have three things attached to it. It has a set number
Uh-huh.
of charges, so that's kind of, I want to see, a game balancing thing. So when
Makes
it comes
sense.
to all this high tech, it all runs off of a single power source, and that single power source has a limited number of charges.
Makes sense. I mean, there's like a certain amount of wattage going on here, so like it makes sense that there's a hard limit.
We have our Nox flight pack, which allows you to fly.
Hmm.
And we talked about some more stuff here and some stuff. What else? The holographic fields, the
Hmm.
radios in black zones are suppressed. So you can, once you're inside, you can't talk to anyone outside. So a lot of people have carried on these extremely powerful radios as in this hope that they can reach people within the black zone. So they're very powerful radios.
What
Uh,
about telegraph lines? Would telegraph lines work in a black zone? I was
if
thinking about
the
laser communication, but then I realized laser comms wouldn't be a thing because it's still a undeveloped tech. But telegraphs existed since the
So that
1840s.
brings a
So
very interesting thing too, because the thanatic reflex, the blight, this weird thing
yeah.
that's, we talk about the fact that it seems like a singular living thing, like the blight,
Hmm.
which is like, so blight is the fog, and then we have the blight rot, which is the terraforming alien growths that are
Yeah.
forming, and then we have the creatures that get that are mutating from these machines. And so
Hmm.
it's interesting the fact that that you imagine the blight rot can seep. It seeps into the ground, seeps into the groundwater. It affects water supplies. It's
Mm.
entirely possible that it gets into the telegraph lines and starts sending weird messages. And
I just
so,
thought of something about the blight. Oh, let me guess. The big aquifer in the Midwest, the Agla, the I forgot how to pronounce it, but like the big one that's like giving us most of our food. Let me guess. The blight's in the middle of contaminating that aquifer.
yeah, so there is a huge issues regarding blight contamination, and so there's a lot of attempts to try to close off the water lines, which of course is very
Hmm.
difficult. It has created huge issues with supply lines and agriculture within the heartland, for
I
example.
would imagine. Yeah, because just the sheer amount of disruption that this technology can cause, like, yeah, I could just imagine. I'm imagining like this is kind of like Command and Conquer, where you got zones that are taken over by this blight, and then there are like yellow zones that aren't exactly taken over, but they're still like habitable. And then you have blue zones that are safe and free from the blight, but even still, the
Go-
amount of
Yeah, going into the classic Tiberian Sun First Command and Conquers, I definitely
yeah,
looked at that as inspiration. About I want so there are some aspects that are similar, but
oh
we
yeah,
don't necessarily have specifically Tiberium, but there is a thing called Warborn, which is another
hmm,
reason why you go into Black Zone because there's a lot of stuff of value. When these things are mutating, they do produce materials which are incredibly valuable.
makes sense. So there's an impetus for going in to the blight zones because there's economic potential within them.
Yeah, in fact, some people believe that this alternate version of Earth, the only value it has now is the stuff that you can salvage and mine from Black Zones.
Okay. Speaking of, like, since they have access to portal tech, are there like efforts underway to like evacuate to different zones that are safe from the blight?
Yeah, so a lot of rich people, they believe a lot of rich people, oligarchs, have already fled the planet into parallel realities.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and so, yeah, and that's another thing that's helping the population dwindle.
Yeah. So I can imagine like some of the more like progressive states would probably like try to evacuate their people. Like I could see like speaking of like the black zones, you mentioned like Europe's like pretty much a black zone. I would imagine like maybe Scandinavia and Spain would probably be safe from somewhat from the black zone because Spain has the Pyrenees and Scandinavia has the Baltic Sea.
So Spain and Portugal, northern Scandinavian, East Russia, most of China, Australia, South America, and and bits and most of Africa are still relatively safe.
Okay, so Africa is probably a nicer place to live in this timeline than it was in ours. I would hope.
It's still yeah. Thing is that
Mhm.
very few places have outlawed trophon technology.
Oh
So
yeah,
in Africa, it's all about repurposing all the relics left over from the war. So they
makes
play
sense.
around with it a lot. So some people do kind of think that Africa is one big black zone, but the suppression field hasn't reached there yet. But they think there's only a matter of time
Hmm.
before things start breaking down and things start getting abused.
Makes sense.
Australia, for example, is relatively safe. The British Isles are relatively safe because they try to outlaw trophon technology, so they still use internal combustion, steam, and diesel.
Makes sense.
It's almost diesel
So
punk in that over
I'm
in
just imagining Britain is like advertising themselves as like the last bastion of civilization in this world.
them and so yeah, because they're one of the few that are still trying to like Spain and Portugal are part of that same alliance where they don't use
Okay,
trophon. So
makes
finishing
sense.
up technology, we have the Hound, which is an aerial reconnaissance drone that flies around you and helps you out. And sidebar stuff like is miasma alive? We talk about whether or not miasma is alive. And let's see here. Some of the other cool sidebars. Organetics. So organetics are genetically engineered replacement organs. This is another way
Oh
you
yeah.
can boost your character. There are um, replacement organs and replacement limbs. Now, the way it works, you don't go off to a shelf and go, I want that piece. They'll say, I want an organ replacement. They'll take some of your cells, they put it in this alien chamber, and it grows you a replacement organ or limb. The issue, of course, is that it does not really resemble what you want your limb or organ to resemble. In fact, it very much doesn't look at, and we talk about the fact that they look slightly different. And if you have these organs, you are also potentially turning into one of these spark-based DNA people. And for example, and the organs also don't really work like normal organs.
Oh yeah.
The stomach, for example, changes your appetite. We go into how the new stomach, for example. There's actually a lot of science going into here. For example, we talk about the lungs. They look like more like avian breathing. Organotic lungs are more rigid than human variations, employing anterior and posterior air sacs to pump air in one direction through the lungs, allowing for continuous gas exchange without mixing fresh and stale air. This allows organotic lungs to operate in high altitudes for longer periods. So the idea that if you have your lungs replaced with organotic lungs, they're actually you there's they don't look like human lungs. They work perfectly in your system. The idea being that
Hmm.
you implant them in your system, it automatically knits itself into position and closes up the wound without scarring. Like that's how kind of weirdly, it's almost like you're putting a living life form, which turns into the organ you need, but then ends up being better than the one you had before. So there's alien versions of your liver, your kidneys, your heart. There's different types of eyes you can get.
Oh yeah.
If you have limbs, they're generally not flesh covered. Sometimes you'll have 3 fingers. Sometimes you'll have 6. And so this is kind of the cyberpunk, but this is closer to the more purely biopunk type of stuff you would see. So there's a bunch of things you can get. You have to buy your leg and then you like or your arm, and then you can add and pre-purchase modifications like climbing
Yeah, what are
spurs.
cost an arm and a leg, right?
Yeah. Um, for example, the hidden blade, for example, does involve you having
Yes.
to cut your arm off. You can literally through your wrist, you can literally tear your arm off. You have to do, I think, 16 slashing damage to your arm, or if
Hmm.
somebody does, I think at least 10 slashing damage to them, you can literally voluntarily lop your arm off, and then the bone inside your arm extends and opens up into a blade. And then when you're done, you can grab your limb and affix it back on, like Dororo of the very famous Uzama Tezuko manga from the 1950s.
Yeah, yeah. They remade that for a modern audience.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you played the PS2 game Blood Would Tell, which I did play, you get to play as that character.
I never got to play any fun games when I was young.
So there's a whole section. And so here is a section where we have skins, and we're talking about tabula rasas, but this is now
Yeah.
not the playable race. This is now you remote controlling. You basically put on a governor hood, but guess what? There are different types of governor hoods, and some of them are pretty weird looking. For example, one of them allows you to operate 2 versions of yourself. And
Hmm.
on your turn, you can decide which one you want to operate. You can switch them on the fly. There's one where you can control multiple, and then you can have your action, your move, and your bonus action come out from different versions of yourself. Now this is an expensive proposition because you have to purchase these skins. You don't just get them. You have to purchase your skins just like you would anything
Hmm.
else. You can actually go on contract. It actually shows you how to go on contract, and players can get a skin for free at character generation. So we can see here, 2 years, you got to pay $800 a week, which means your characters are on the hook to make sure that they have successful missions because they have to pay for this lease. But if you
Oh yeah.
die, you get 1 death replacement per month. So if you do die, you can get another replacement. Um, you can buy secondhand, lightly used skins, veteran
Hmm.
ones, but they can have weird things that happens. You can have weird memories that will like there's a lot of role playing stuff here that goes into but the hood that you wear is also alterable. That allows you to determine how many guys you can control. There's one called the conductor, And the conductor,
Yeah.
you're not remote controlling it wirelessly. Instead, you actually have a wire from your hood to your duplicate. And so you're going into combat with it, but
Mm.
you can control multiple. In fact, one of the NPCs in the setting is a guy that runs 6 duplicates. So he has 6 wires that run off of his neck that go into 6 clones of himself. And so
Okay.
it's basically an army of identical people.
I'm just reminded of that one character from Hideo Kojima's Walking Simulator, Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Did you get the idea from there?
I haven't played the game. So
Okay, yeah, well, basically, I haven't played the game either, but I saw the trailer, and he's basically like puppeting like a bunch of soldiers, and they're going into an area, and they're directly attached to him. That's what I'm reminded of when you mentioned the conductor.
yeah, here they're basically clones of him. And
Oh
then we
yeah.
have the Harlequin. The Harlequin, you can actually infect corpses, skin corpses, and they'll operate as well. And so
Oh
you can
my.
create an army of zombies under your control.
I know someone I play with who would love that. Uh, yeah, she would get a kick out of it.
And that takes us to catalysts, which is the last thing we'll talk about.
Sure.
Because because obviously, once again, guns and armor are from Armory. Um,
Yeah.
I haven't done the map of the region, so I haven't gone into specifics. I do know where these black zones are, but haven't explained some of the other sidebars, like about agriculture and so forth. And we haven't done the
Oh yeah.
monsters, but the monsters we're talking about: Trophon abominations, shapes, hollows, other reapers,
Hmm.
and so forth. The catalysts were a very interesting thing. I had the idea of like boostable drugs, and the idea kept on looking like vigors from Bioshock and
Bioshock.
Bioshock
Yeah.
Infinite. And the more I looked at it, I was trying to find, okay, I was looking at it going, okay, this feels, how do I make this a bit more original? And literally like 2 days ago, I thought of the idea of going, okay, maybe it's like a dermal patch. But what if it's a living dermal patch? So you have a
Ooh.
little
Okay.
pulsating ball with little tentacles, and you basically attach it to your neck, to your torso, to your arm, and to your leg.
Okay. Okay.
And while it is attached, it does funky things. And
Hmm.
so you as a character can have, I think, 4 on your torso, 2 on your head, and 1 on each of your arms and legs. And so they are clearly visible. You walk in and there's this thing pulsating on your neck that's giving you a boost. And as long as it's attached, it's almost like a potion, except the fact
Hmm.
that the potion is attached to your head, and you can end the effect by removing it. And at that point, the effect ends, right? Or
Hmm.
it
Makes sense.
expires and it falls off. And you could always terminate it ahead of time by taking it off. But if you take it off, it's still running, which means once it's
Yeah.
activated and you have a clock. But sometimes they do some. So these are these genetically engineered living dermal patches, and they're called catalysts. And there's actually quite a few of them. I actually made this is how many that I made up here in the last few days. And some of
Uh-huh.
them are very straightforward. Like one of them gives you a boost. One of them basically like these things are not just drugs. Sometimes they actually alter your genetic code and physically change you.
Makes sense.
Um, Aegis, for example, gives you a +2 to AC. Adept gives you swimming speed. Apex gives you a boost. Like so, the idea that you actually attach this thing, and for 6 hours, it alters your genetic code, and then when it comes off, it's permanent. So this is 15,000 for like a permanent boost to an ability. Um,
Hmm.
the anastasis brings someone back to life, so you put it on them, and it slowly resurrects them. It's kind of like revivify. Um, let's see what else we have here. There are some ones that affect Gelfs only. There are ones that are in the setting. They're setting only. They're kind of like you're not. These are not things you're going to be purchasing.
Makes
Um,
sense.
for example, compel. You attach this to the side of a Gelf specifically, and it basically programs them to do something. So it's a charm that they have. It's almost impossible for them to resist. So if you attach this to a
That's
Gelf,
horrifying.
you can. Oh, it gets worse. There's some
I
cure,
can
some dark eye
imagine.
defy. Eclipse allows you to erase memories in a Gelf,
Well,
and
that can easily be abused.
it does.
Oh yeah.
Feign, while it's attached, so the person appears dead. Um, Galvanize is basically a torture device. No,
Oh yeah.
galvanize. No, galvanize is not. Galvanize is galvanize is basically you attach it to a corpse and it becomes a
Hmm.
zombie. So there's multiple ways to zombify people. There's like 3 different ways to zombify people in this thing.
Okay, yeah.
Liberation, which is a good one because this one is the one that was developed on the black market as a means
Hmm.
of removing a Gelf's programming. So basically, it liberates. It's an emancipation type of. So it removes all of their compulsion programming and makes them basically free beings.
Yeah.
So that's liberation. But that's also right after where's oh we're not at P yet. Mimic allows you to transform your appearance with this thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
then we have Purge. And a Purge resets a Gelf to factory standard. So basically, if you attach this to a Gelf, within 1 minute, it puts them into a coma. And after the hour, they wake up and they are no longer, they are basically reset. If this was a character with 10 levels, they're at first level and they have no memory of who they are.
That's kind of horrifying. Like, if someone slaps a player character with this, oh my gosh, I can just imagine the sheer amount of salt someone would
Well,
feel about this.
this is not something that you should take lightly. This is, like I said,
Oh yeah.
it's some of these are in the setting, but they're in the game mechanically, but they're not something that players are like, oh, we have one of these. Because obviously, if you have Gelfs as player characters, none of them want this thing anywhere near them for obvious reasons. Same thing.
Exactly.
Same thing with the Rage one, which turns you into basically an insane barbarian. And it was developed. They say it was developed as a last-ditch weapon for Gelf troops facing overwhelming odds.
Oh yeah.
Right. Rechain, for example, like when a Gelf is given ownership, it's programmed to be the property of someone, and a rechain is one you implant into a Gelf when you want to reassign ownership to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh yeah, Scorch is one that literally kills Gelfs. It literally destroys their brain.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting like the stink where you basically just create noxious gas. It just activates your BO to be lethal.
Yeah. This I like how horrifying some of these things are. Like, this is basically war crimes in a can. I love it.
Yeah. There's very few really positive benefits to these catalysts. And the funny thing is that when I talked about the fact there's like 400 spark plugs that were ever built,
Yeah.
every one of these is one of those. And so, for
Mhm.
example, as just thinking off the cuff, a player character could be, oh, I'm a spark person. I have the spark for purge, and I'm hiding out with in outlasts surrounding black zones because
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want anyone to take advantage of the fact that I know how to build these things.
Makes
Um,
sense.
Stuff like that. There are things that you could like. There's tons of gaming options for role playing characters. The biggest problem with Spark Tech, if you have a spark plug, you feel compelled to make them. So there's actually a sidebar talking about people
Mm-hmm.
you have the inspiration to create technology that they have an ethical issue with, and so sometimes
Oh
they
yeah.
build them and then they don't want anyone to use them. So there's stories of warehouses full of
Mm-hmm.
spark tech that the owner never wants people to use.
Okay, this reminds me of Tinkers from Worm. So in the web novel, people get superpowers from eldritch entities after traumatic events, and Tinkers, I mean, you're basically compelled to use your superpowers. So Tinkers have the ability to make technology that can't be replicated because of black boxing by the aliens. So, I mean, really old Worm spoilers, by the way, but basically that's what this reminds me of. Just the urge to create this stuff, but you don't necessarily want to use it because what if you get a spark plug for creating, I don't know, self-replicating nanoviruses?
Yeah. Now, once again, all the Spark tech has either been technology that interfaces with biological life forms or is a
Oh yeah,
biological system itself.
makes
So,
sense.
so there's tons of weird. For example, we don't talk about the fact that um, we talk about gelfs, right,
Oh
which
yeah.
are genetically engineered life forms. But there's a gelf, and then there is what is the I remember now what because there's gelf, and I think it's genetically engineered. Oh, gefs. There's gelfs and gefs. Gefs are genetically engineered fodder. So there are genetically engineered
Ah,
animals like Cuba cows,
Cuba cows.
which are cubic cows, which can be stacked.
That's just that just seems like really like cruel and unusual. Just like just biopunk in a nutshell. It's just like just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Like mirror cells.
Yeah.
I
See,
remember the scientists who were working on that research were like, yeah, we're going to cancel all this research because if we're actually successful, we could wipe out all life on the earth.
yeah. So we talk about the first release of Cuba cows wasn't even offered much fanfare, with initial suppositions pointing to an entirely Terran origin, given they were just brainless bovine, able to survive immobile for the entirety of their lives and could be loaded in racks for efficiency and ease of use. It was thought their Spark origins were initially suppressed as they were offered by then believed independent Agrogen Solutions, which was later discovered to be a subsidiary of Wagner and Kessler Biogenics. And then we have
Oh yeah,
Stumpers, six-legged, oversized prairie dogs doubled as beasts of burden and loyal pets. With their friendly demeanor and lovable faces gracing the covers of numerous magazines and papers of the age. This was followed by the far less attractive spinners, docile, omnivorous arachnids that feasted on human waste and secreted spider silk made from carbon.
I love that. Shit-eating spiders making silk. That's carbon nano. That's funny.
So we haven't gone into huge detail. Like this is something that's going to be in the settings section that's going to get expanded because obviously
Oh yeah.
this whole section deals with the history of the world, and then we have a chapter after equipment, which is here's the world where it's at. So like I said, this
Oh
book is
yeah.
already at 75,700 words. I still have vehicles to do in the equipment section, although it's going to be not as big as I thought it was going to be, just because I don't want to put too much effort into it. But vehicles,
Oh
once
yeah.
again, we talk about the vehicles and the fact that there's different types of reactors. This is their
Hmm.
water demands. How you can overdrive them, you can stress them. But vehicles in this story are kind of like magic items, which means in the same way that you have to tune to a magic artifact, you actually
Oh
have
yeah.
to tune to your vehicles. So you actually have to attune to your car, and then you gain a telepathic link to your car. Um, and so right now, this is where I'm at. I'm just currently working on the vehicles. In this setting, if someone says, "Hey, can I drive a Cadillac Eldorado?" I'm like, "No, there are no Cadillac Eldorados in this setting, but there is a B2B Victoria or a Fulgurator, which because
Hmm.
in this time period, most of the auto manufacturers went bankrupt. Um, because
Makes sense.
why would you want to buy a crappy internal combustion when you can have a flying truck that ran on water?
Speaking of that, you mentioned that Britain outlawed the Trophin technology. So that means Lotus and Jaguars probably still around.
So we go into detail the fact that some of them, like I can't remember. We talked about some of the car companies that were folded, so a lot of
Mhm.
them merged in a way to compete. And some of them operate, but they operate using Trophon engines. And like I
Uh-huh.
said, in some of the other illustrations we saw. That being said, when the North American War breaks out, most of these auto
Yeah.
manufacturers go toward military vehicles. So in the 70s and 80s, you don't see 80s or 70s era vehicles. The vehicles are still kind of in the 60s and 70s
Makes sense.
because the
Yeah.
auto industry hasn't rebounded yet. So even though
Hmm.
the setting of of the default is 1984, um, don't expect to see that 1984 brutalist art style.
Makes sense.
Like
It's
that
still like 60s, 70s a little bit.
exactly. So in the campaign or the adventures, and I'm going to be starting up my own group here. Players
Oh yeah.
will be able to create their group, but their mission is to take objectives from the outlasts and go into black zones in search of anything salvageable, whether it
Okay.
be retrieving warborn from a specific place or escorting someone through a zone. That's basically. Oh yeah, that's another one. I wonder. I should
Okay.
probably put that in there. There's a great movie. Let's see. Do I have it on here? I don't have it on here. I'll put it on here.
Okay.
Monsters, which is a wonderful movie I own. That's a
Oh.
that's a movie. That's Gareth Edwards' first movie. The same guy
Hmm.
who did Rogue One, Godzilla, The Creator. His
Ah.
first film was called Monsters, which he shot for about $50,000, which is a wonderful, wonderful film. But that's another film where you're escorting someone through a zone. In this case, it's a zone full of monsters.
That sounds very familiar. Isn't that the one where it's like a camera crew going through Mexico and they're trying to like get to an airport or something, and these giant alien monsters are trying to eat them?
Well, I don't know
Or is
about
it
Monsters is set in Mexico, but it's just a
okay?
guy and a girl. He's a photographer.
Yes, I think I know exactly which film you're talking about.
Yes.
I'm gonna-
So it's just a guy and a girl, and they're basically on their own. And a lot of ambient storytelling. It's I love it. It's a fantastic film. Some people find it incredibly boring. I absolutely love it. But that
I found it.
is, yeah, it's a very, very good movie. But it has a lot of really impressive visual effects for a film that cost $50,000.
That reminds me of how Markiplier made Iron Lung
Yeah, low
for
budget, 3 million. I just saw a film called Primitive War, which is
yeah,
a it is basically Jurassic Park in the
in
Vietnam
Vietnam.
War. And
Yeah,
for a film that cost $7 million, it looks insanely good.
yeah. I haven't seen Primitive War, but if you like, I'll give it a shot and see if it
Oh
see
no,
what it's
it's
like.
it should be noted. It is dumb, but it is
Okay.
hella fun dumb. It's also R
Okay.
rated, so it does not like it lingers on some of these guys' deaths. I'm like, oh god, you could cut
Uh,
away any second. But so anyway, so that's what we have. So it should be
mhm.
noted this is going to Kickstarter probably in a weekish.
Oh yeah.
After this goes live, I'm going to be working on finishing up the Kickstarter page,
Hell yeah.
and then I'll be starting up my own private party as I continue to develop the setting.
Hell yeah.
So, any other final questions?
Okay. Final questions. Okay, I got a lot of questions. Okay,
Go ahead, ask away. Ask all of them.
nicest place to live in this world. Like, if you're stuck in this planet, where do you want to live?
Well, it depends. If you
Yeah.
want to eschew all Trophon and Spark-based technology, you want to live in the UK
Okay.
or in Portugal or in one of the islands, the Azores, Hawaii, some place where Trophons you won't necessarily find them. If you are a Guelph, you probably want to live in the Olympic Maritime, which is pushes
Okay.
for Guelph emancipation.
So where I live is probably like a nicer place if you're a Guelph. So like the Pacific Northwest is probably somewhat decent if you don't mind the biological horrors running around in the woods.
Exactly. So there is
I'm
a
gonna
black
pee.
zone in Canada. There are two really. If I go into black zones, we actually talk about the black zones. Let's see if I can
Yeah.
find that section. Sidebar black zones. Here we go. And we can see that Eastern Europe, it has the bone fields. Central Europe, not including Germany, which is the Eisen miasma exclusion zone, also called Bleikgarten. Germany has UAC Sector 0, which is a really bad place. North
Goddard
Africa.
Damerung. Yeah, that's
Then we have
appropriate.
the Saharan Blight Belt, which is called the Scorched Pits, which is in North Africa. Southwestern United States is called the Big Empty, and it is a big empty. It's just a big vapid open space.
Yeah.
Central United States has the Heartland Blight Corridor called Dust Bowl Gamma. Central Canada has Dreadrock, and Japan has the Pacific Exclusion Zone. So
Interesting.
those are where the predominant black zones, and they're all going to look a little different. The miasma is a different color. It's
Hmm.
yellow. Sometimes it's orange. Sometimes it's red. Sometimes it's just white.
Okay. Second question: is it possible to reclaim territory from these blight zones?
No one has been able to figure out how to yet. The biggest issue has been the fact that the one thing that this timeline and this universe does not have is nuclear power.
Very interesting.
because
Because of this technology, they didn't need nuclear power.
not only that, but it actually goes into detail by when Wagner was finding people to take these sparks, he wanted scientists. So a lot of the leading
Yeah,
nuclear scientists were ended up being spark tech, creating spark-based inventions. So there is no
makes
nuclear
sense.
power in this setting. So you couldn't drop a nuclear weapon. You'd have to use traditional power. And the problem is that they have been able to scorch. But for example, there is a fungus in Montana that covers hundreds and hundreds of acres. You know about this?
Yeah,
Yeah. So what if you said, I want to be able to kill it? How would you do that? Could you feasibly kill this fungal life form? Or how about the that one forest biome that covers hundreds of acres and they think it's just one singular life form? How do you
hmm
go about, oh, you got to you got to burn all that fungus? I go, yeah, but you can scorch the entire top of the landscape until you get into, you dig it up and dig up every square inch. How are you going to kill it all? And that's been the issue, is
makes
that
sense.
the fact that you would have to carpet bomb millions of acres
hmm
of land, and unfortunately they have not been able to. Europe has tried, and that's why this whole region of black zone in Europe is just decimated. That they've tried and they
Makes
can't
sense.
bomb it because unfortunately, outside of nuclear weapons, there's no, you can't just carpet bomb enough because there's just not enough bombs in the world to
Makes sense. Yeah.
level an entire country every square inch without it just emerging again, right? They think the
Yeah.
miasma is somehow intelligent because whenever they see the fog moving, they have recorded it seeing whenever it approaches a new building, it seems to try to find ways to get inside of it.
Interesting. Okay. What about atmospheric sequestration? Like, would that help with the miasma?
Well, there are gas masks that will
hmm
filter miasma, but
I'm not talking about gas masks. I'm talking about like, okay, so like you know how like gas is made for industrial purposes. What they do is they get a centrifuge and they extract the gases they want from the atmosphere and they bottle it.
right.
So I'm just wondering if anyone's like tried to do that on an industrial scale, like just directly like set up one of these facilities on the edge of the miasma, then turn it on, and then just extract miasma from the atmosphere, purify it, or maybe sequester it away.
Well, that's the issue, has been, once again, by the time we get to the 80s, there hasn't been a technology that they can remove it fast enough without it replenishing. Because it's, fortunately, it's not like we have
hmm
a certain excess amount of gas, is because the vegetation, the mutated creatures within the areas are creating the miasma itself. And so it
Okay,
constantly replenishes itself. So for every couple hundred gallons of miasma you extract out of the atmosphere, the blight rot within the zone has replenished it from inside the zone.
makes sense. Yeah. What about Sonics? Does Sonics do anything to the miasma and the blight?
No,
Nope.
no,
Okay, so the Tiberian Sun solution doesn't work here. Okay.
no.
Um, since they have access to alternate realities, like has anyone from an alternate reality like tried to bring tech over to help deal with the blight?
So within the setting, they have opened
hmm
up portals to different worlds and different realities.
hmm
Now, at this point, now when I say they've opened up, this has happened only in the last 3 or 4 years of the setting. So it's
Okay,
not like something that's been around for 30 or 40 years. Whenever
makes
they've
sense.
opened up to another world, the world has been dead. Every
Oh,
single
that's
time they've
interesting.
opened up a portal to a new planet, that planet looks to have clearly been of an ancient civilization that has been dead for millions of years. The implications,
That's concerning.
that is very concerning. And so not only that, but miasma and blight has is usually covered and infected the entire planet. So
That
nobody
implies
nobody
that
wants
this
to go.
technology.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing the implication here is like this technology that opens the gates. It's choosing world. It feels like it's choosing worlds where this technology has been used before, and it's already corrupted the planet. I think it might be a subtle warning here of not to abuse the tech, because this is what happens. And if a portal is open up to a world where the technology doesn't uh lead to a horrific thing, it would solve everyone's problems. So the technology is probably not incentivized to like find worlds where things went right.
Yeah.
But you also said that people from this world or from worlds like this one can end up in this universe.
Yeah. So in those situations, this gives people a carte blanche if you want to create um, systems where characters from other worlds, a la Rifts, could come into this one. Now, in these
Okay.
situations, most of the time, these have been in when they go into parallel realities. These parallel realities are alternate worlds that don't have this
The
technology.
tech.
So
Yeah,
yes,
makes sense.
there is a situation, once again, this is 84, where somebody from 1984 with 1984 technology from our world could
Yeah.
take what they know. But unfortunately, 84 doesn't really have a lot of like superior knowledge. All they can bring
Oh,
back is like,
exactly.
oh, you have this BioCore that is the most powerful PC known to man. I have an Apple IIe. Do you want to take a look at that?
Exactly.
I have an internal combustion engine that requires gasoline that almost no vehicle uses in the
Makes
in the
sense.
blight rot 1984. Sure, I have a slightly more advanced gun.
Okay. I can think of like one person from our timeline of 1984 that could probably like actually do good in this world. So a nuclear engineer
Yeah.
or
So
nuclear scientist.
yeah, but as
Has anyone with those specifications come through those portals?
so far,
Hmm.
most of the time people have used those to flee into realities, to flee their worlds. No
Yeah.
one with the knowledge of nuclear power has come into this world and go, you know what this world needs? Nuclear weapons. No, it's
Fair.
that hasn't happened. That's a very specific thing because so far,
Hmm.
these portals, there's one slight issue with these portals. Um,
Yeah.
Talking about when it comes to what they require, they actually suck in miasma to help control their operation, to help power themselves. So you have to build these
Interesting.
things. You have to build these things on the edges of black zones, and because the black zones expand, the large number of these initial gates that got built are actually now sitting inside of these black zones. So sometimes
Mm,
some of the missions that Reapers have to go through, Reapers have to escort people to and from these rift gates by saying, "Well, we have to go in and check the rift gates and see if any sad son of a bitch has come in from that world." So
makes
as a
sense.
result, it's actually incredibly dangerous to use them. And then the other gates that aren't within black zones are highly regulated by either militaries or governments or corporations. So
I'm just wondering. You mentioned that the portals like consume miasma. Do you think it might be possible to like use these portals as like a way to clean up black zones?
well, once again, we go back to the same situation
Hmm.
uh, where miasma regenerates itself. Like the thing is that
Yeah.
the same thing with the bone frames, slip gates, and rift gates. They require so many resources. They cost hundreds of millions of
Hmm.
dollars to build that you would not. No one has the resources and the money to build enough of these things to really dent the miasma's infection.
Okay, makes sense. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of like how like realistically in universe could they solve the problem of the existing like blight zones. Like, it's just a very interesting like question. Like, how do you deal with this economically and feasibly?
And that's where most people are looking at the fact that this world is circling kind of the drain, that
Makes sense.
there's
Yeah,
very little, you know, the humanity have done too much damage abusing this technology
makes
to
sense.
to kind of repair it. Now the funny thing is that the world isn't dying technically, it's just becoming inhospitable to
Changing.
humans. And so the implication that it's going to turn into an alien landscape. Now, with these other worlds, we've seen the fact that they're basically actively dead. So we don't know exactly what happened to those worlds, whether or not they did something that was worse, or whether or not Earth has a capacity of a prior or fire victory where they do
Hmm.
make it habitable to certain people, but the vast majority of the
Makes
population
sense.
still dies.
Yeah. I'm definitely getting like the glass is half full in this world. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, the blight is like expanding, and also the world's becoming uninhabitable humans, but life will still go on hypothetically. But the other worlds implies that maybe that's not the case. But another thing I've been thinking about is like space travel. Like, did the US in this timeline make it to the moon? Like, did they launch a rocket and get into space? And does this biotech work in space?
So the answer to the question is, well, once again, their Operation Paperclip was entirely focused on retrieving spark plugs, or sparks as they're known, people who have spark technology,
Okay.
because Germany, for example, didn't develop rockets during World War II.
Oh, okay. That's a huge divergence.
Because once again, all of those scientists were pushed to create more trophon technology. And
Makes
so,
sense.
and because of the ramifications and the condition, the USSR was in extremely bad shape from the war, way worse than other places. And because the United States was more concerned of being having a supremacy on trophon technology, there wasn't a space race to have. And so I think I
Okay.
can't remember whether or not there is a talk about a space race, or whether or
You
not there
did
was.
mention that there are satellites, though. So, like,
Yeah,
did someone make a portal and yeet
yeah,
satellites into our orbit that way? Or
yeah. So here it says here, like, so without a Cold War, there would have been no push for a space race. Rocket propulsion was finally developed in the United States in the 1950s, with satellites sent into orbit by the end of the decade. Their first manned launch, which was also politically motivated, occurred on July 4th, 1972, in Arizona, on the border between Olympic Maritime and the American heartland. So there was a space race, but it was actually between rival American nations. This prompted
makes
military
sense.
engagement between rival forces outside of the launch facility, which did not prevent liftoff, placing the first astronaut, Charles Martinez, into low orbit. So the first man in space happened in 1972. They're saying, and with
Okay.
hopes of a potential lunar landing dashed as environmental concerns proved more pressing. So, as I said, so there's been there's been people in space, but no lunar landing. And by the way, this idea of political motivated by putting the launch facility on the border between two nations, that's a
Yeah.
reference to an anime called Wings of Oniamis.
I remember that one. Yeah.
So, like I said,
Yeah.
it's hard
There was like
for
a
me
battle.
to have an original idea.
Yeah. Yeah. This battle between like these two nations as they're launching a man into space. Hayao Miyazaki knows how to cook. I'll say as much.
Well, Wings of Oniamis isn't a Miyazaki movie.
Oh, the style looks really similar, though.
Oh, it is. But
Wait, what was it? Osamu Tezuka, the guy who made Steam Boy, who made Wings of Miyazaki?
that's
Or
Otomo.
was Otomo?
Otomo, but
Yeah.
he also didn't do Oniamis. The Akira Steam Boy was Otomo. Miyazaki is all the other good stuff. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
Ghibli.
I can't remember who did Wings of Oniamis, but it's neither. It's none of the big names.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So like the section is foreign technology, basically just the things you think you expect but don't. So right here, when the World War II, nuclear power remained a dream of physicists until the late 1960s, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction did not occur at all, given the lack of global superpowers by the late 1970s.
Makes sense because of the blight. There's like it's still like great powers, but basically it's really hard to be a great power or a superpower in this timeline when you have like the omnipresent threat of the blight on your borders constantly.
So like I said, there's no, within the setting, there is, I mean, obviously you're going to have nuclear power and nuclear energy. It's just far behind what we expect, and you don't have the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And we talk about here, for example, the unintended irony of Spark development is that it focused on alien concepts rather than natural progression of human scientific research. Color television was still being developed in 1926, but GPS had yet to be achieved. Penicillin was discovered in 1942, but pacemakers and chemotherapy were not developed until later. Personal home computing is still not a reality. The special and general theories of relativity were established in 1905 and 1915, with DNA being discovered in 1910 rather than 1953, but nuclear fission was delayed by decades. Meanwhile, Spark technology introduced anti-gravity, slipcase, lab-grown organ replacements, and bioneural circuitry, advances that the all-natural timeline has shown no signs of developing.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm getting a schizotech vibe here. Like, just the very vastly different technological progression in in ways that are very non-linear. So in some respects, this world's more advanced than ours, like especially in the realm of biotech. But when it comes to like space travel and nuclear weapons, like it's still very behind. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
Is it
space.
hypothetically possible for someone from our modern timeline to like come to this world, or is it like soft locked into 1984?
Well, I mean, because that's where I put the timeline. I don't actually say what happens in the
Mm-hmm.
future from 84 because that's where I kind of put the roadblock of the setting. I do know that
Mm-hmm.
in the novelization, the main character is somebody from our world in 84 who goes
Oh,
into this world. Um,
interesting.
in the story, so the one thing about sparks is that sparks, when they get a spark plug, it's kind of like getting it's like kind of like being infected with the spice melange from Dune.
Yeah,
It gives you a lot of funky abilities. You get a lot of health benefits, extremely long life. In fact, no spark has ever died of old age. And so Wagner,
very
who
interesting.
was born I think in 1865, is still alive in 1984. Um, and in
Mm.
the beginning of the story, he flees through a slipgate to our world, and his and basically the idea, the fact that
Mm.
he has a set number of sparks he makes. I think it's like 453, I think. And then the last
Yeah,
spark is the spark that allows him to reset, to create more. So only he's able to make sparks,
interesting.
but the last one he has allows him to pass on that knowledge to somebody else. So he gives that spark to our main character, and then Wagner kills himself to stop himself from getting into his hands. And so our main
Because the
character,
spark is compelling him to make more sparks. So in order to stop this, he takes
but
matters in his own hand. I see. I
yeah,
see.
but he could not he couldn't compel himself to kill himself until he gives the last spark over to somebody else. And when he gives that
Mm-hmm.
spark to somebody else, at that point, the main villain, Kessler, and his cronies now are hunting our main character as the single most important person alive, and that's part of the story. And then we go into a road story where this person's on the
Mm-hmm.
run from these people, and he has
Makes sense.
a lot of local friends, but this is a stranger in a strange land where he's trapped on this alien version of Earth, surrounded by biotechnology that feels alien and unfamiliar to him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely like this story's concept. Like I definitely want to read this when you finally publish it. This sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, well, like I said, the Kickstarter should launch weekish. It'll depend on how quickly I can finish up the rest of the campaign, and then we'll see what happens. But like I said, we'll leave it at that. We've been going on this for almost 2 hours,
Oh
and so
gosh, yeah. Where has the time gone? Well, I do have stuff to do today, but yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been fun. Hopefully, we can do this again in the future.
yeah. Oh, well, we maybe we'll do a tour once we get more artwork, and maybe we'll do a part two once we have the setting, the vehicles, and the monsters.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I can like Google at like all the cool like technical drawings and such. Complain about the welds. I gotta put that 7 years of welding school to use somewhere.
Exactly, exactly. So for that, we will sign off. Thank you for this preview of what the kind of
Mhm.
mechanics we're going to see in Sparkplug Chronicles. Thank you, everyone, and please follow the link to go to the Kickstarter. And thanks to my lovely co-host.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you have a wonderful day, Chris.
All right, take care, man.